Hello, how are you? My name is Joel, and today I'm here to share with you my story with my neighbor Todd. Please note that the full version is in the comments. It's over 2 hours long, so be prepared. Now let's get started. Things happened in a way that neither he nor I could have imagined. After that day we made love in my living room. It felt like a door had been opened, and nothing would ever be the same again. Todd started sending me messages in the middle of the night. I would roll over in bed, the house silent, and the screen of my phone would light up my face with his name. Simple words, sometimes just, "Are you awake?" But they made my heart race. I loved it. Knowing that he thought about me when the whole world was asleep made my chest feel warm, as if there was an invisible thread connecting us, pulling us closer and closer. On the other hand, guilt came like a shadow. I looked at my sleeping wife beside me, at the photo of my daughter on the table, and felt dirty, divided, as if I were betraying not only their trust, but also the life I had built for myself. And yet I couldn't stop. The desire Todd awakened in me was greater than any moral barrier I tried to put up. I kept asking myself why things had to be so complicated. Why did Todd have to show up right now, at this point in my life? Sometimes I found myself wondering, what if we had met before? When we were single, free, unattached, unencumbered, maybe everything would be simpler. Maybe there would be no guilt. Maybe I could live this without feeling torn apart inside. But then I would quickly dismiss that thought. If that had happened back then, I wouldn't have built the family I have today. I wouldn't have lived every moment with my wife. I wouldn't have seen my daughter's smile, the purest love I've ever felt. It was as if fate had given me everything I wanted most, and at the same time placed me before a temptation impossible to ignore. That weekend, we didn't get to see each other properly. We just exchanged quick messages on our cell phones and exchanged a few glances from afar, over the wall. It made me increasingly anxious, almost desperate. The desire to feel his body against mine, to kiss him until I lost my breath, to have him all to myself, was almost unbearable. One of those afternoons, I stood at the living room window, watching surreptitiously. Todd was in the backyard, wearing only black swim trunks, walking near the pool. The water ran down his broad chest, his strong arms, until it disappeared at that perfect waistline. The sun made every drop on his hair shine, every curve of his body. I could hardly breathe. My eyes were fixed on him, as if he were made just for me. Just imagining him made my body react on its own, the excitement growing fast, as if he were my addiction. I was so lost in fantasy that I didn't notice when my wife entered the room. "Honey, are you okay?" she asked, approaching me. "What are you looking at? Is that the neighbor?" My heart almost jumped out of my mouth. I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm, and smiled quickly. No, it's just the neighbor, playing with his son," I improvised. She stopped beside me, sighed deeply, and commented in a soft tone, "It makes me miss when our daughter was little. How time flies, right?" "Yeah, I miss those days too," I replied, forcing a smile. But inside, all I could think about was how to hide the turmoil that was betraying me. I took a deep breath and left the room before she could realize the truth. I went into the bathroom, leaned against the sink, and closed my eyes. I couldn't get Todd out of my head the way he was, his body, his slightly provocative smile. With each memory, my heart raced, even faster. I tried to control my anxiety, to convince myself that I needed to wait. But it was useless. I wanted time to pass quickly. Monday seemed so far away, and I was certain that when we were alone, something powerful would happen. Sunday dragged on as if the hours had decided to torture me. I tried to distract myself, but nothing could get Todd out of my mind. When I lay down, I couldn't sleep. All I could think about was the risk, the desire, the weight of it all. I woke up early, before my alarm even went off. My wife left for work in a hurry, and soon after, I saw Todd's wife and son leave through the window. The house was silent, a silence that seemed to carry promises. I sat in the living room, opened my computer, and tried to work, but every line I read escaped me. My thoughts wandered to him. My cell phone was next to me, and with every vibration, my heart raced. I ran to see it, hoping to find his name lighting up the screen. But it wasn't. It never was. Frustration hit me like a punch in the stomach, but with it came a flame of expectation. Would he come? Was Todd thinking about me with the same intensity at that very moment? The weight was consuming me, and at the same time, it was fueling my desire even more. Around noon, the doorbell rang. My heart raced. I got up quickly and went to the door. My hands were shaking as I turned the doorknob. It was him, handsome as ever, with that smile that disarmed me in every way. "Good morning, handsome," he said, his voice calm and steady. I smiled, feeling my face flush. "Good morning. How are you?" "I'm fine," he replied, taking a step closer. "But it's getting better now." I laughed nervously and made room for him to enter. "Come in." He walked through the door slowly, looking me in the eyes, as if every gesture was calculated to make me even more anxious. "Are you hungry? Want something to eat?" he asked, with that slightly provocative tone. I took a deep breath, trying to hide the turmoil inside me. I moved closer, held his waist, and whispered softly, letting out what was stuck in my throat. "What I want isn't on the table." He smiled sideways, biting his lips slightly. "I spent the whole weekend thinking about it." "Me too," I confessed, unable to contain myself. And then we couldn't resist any longer. Our lips met in an intense kiss, filled with everything we had kept inside until then. It was as if the world had stopped, leaving only the heat of our bodies and the certainty that we were about to cross a line of no return. Our kisses grew more and more intense, charged with everything we had kept silent until that moment. I felt him pressed against me, our breaths coming in gasps, as if the world had stopped just for that moment to exist. He smiled against my mouth, and I couldn't resist. I wrapped my arms tightly around his waist, pulling him even closer. Our bodies fit together like pieces that had always belonged to each other. Little by little, we let the intensity speak for us. His touch took my breath away. The heat of his skin burned against mine, and every glance was an invitation to go even deeper into that forbidden and overwhelming feeling. We ended up on the couch, still kissing urgently, as if we were afraid someone would steal that moment from us. Our hands explored each other tenderly, without haste, discovering details we had never revealed before. The room was filled with sighs, nervous laughter, and the certainty that nothing else mattered but the two of us. Then we laughed together, still embracing, like two accomplices who had crossed a line of no return. We went to the shower, and the hot water falling on us seemed to wash away any remaining doubts or guilt, leaving only a feeling of freedom. There, we exchanged long glances, soft kisses, and meaningful touches. When we finished, we got dressed side by side, in silence. But it was a peaceful silence, the kind of silence that only exists when two people truly understand each other. I smiled at him and said, half laughing, "Now I'm hungry. Shall we go to lunch?" He smiled slightly, knowingly, and replied, "Let's go." We got in the car and drove to a cozy restaurant nearby, in our neighborhood. Sitting at the table, after everything we had been through, felt different, intimate, routine, the beginning of something that went beyond desire. At the restaurant, I felt light, almost as if I were still floating. The place was simple but cozy, with that delicious smell of home cooking that whetted the appetite. We sat side by side, and at times Todd would discreetly run his hand down my leg under the table, making me smile foolishly. While we waited for our food, an older man approached us. I saw Todd's face light up, and suddenly he was on his feet, hugging the guy enthusiastically. I just stood there watching, trying to hide the strange feeling growing inside me. After a few minutes of conversation, Todd looked at me and said, "Oh, let me introduce you. Joel, this is Mark, a friend of mine for many years." The man smiled politely, greeted me with a firm handshake, and said, "Nice to meet you." I replied quickly, "Nice to meet you." They exchanged a few more words, and then Mark said goodbye with a pat on Todd's shoulder, saying they should get together sometime. I remained silent, watching, with a strange feeling in my chest, as if the complicity between them was not just friendship. On the way back, inside the car, the silence bothered me. I couldn't hold back. "Who was that guy?" I asked, trying to sound casual. But my voice was heavy with something even I couldn't hide. Todd laughed softly and replied, "An old friend." That didn't satisfy me. I crossed my arms and insisted, "Friend, huh?" He turned his face toward me with that calm smile and shook his head. "Of course not, handsome. You were the first guy I ever hooked up with. Are you jealous?" I felt my face flush, sighed, and muttered, "I'm sorry. I was jealous." He reached out, placed his hand on my face, and said with a smile, "How cute." I couldn't help but smile back, a little embarrassed but relieved by his answer. I confess that it kept running through my head. Todd had moved to the neighborhood not long ago, and suddenly, out of nowhere, a longtime friend of his shows up right there. I thought it was too much of a coincidence. The way they greeted each other, how natural it seemed. It didn't seem so casual. But at the same time, I didn't want to ruin our moment together, so I ended up swallowing my curiosity and letting it go. I brushed it off, even though a little bit of suspicion still lingered inside me. The days went by, and soon it became almost a habit for us to be together during the week. Todd and I saw each other every day, as if just being near him was essential for me to breathe properly. But when the weekend came, everything changed. We each returned to our routines at home, to our families, and that distance of only 2 days seemed like endless torture. It was during those moments that I tested myself the most. I would pick up my phone, open the conversation with him, and stare at the screen, my fingers itching to type anything. I wanted to call him, hear his voice, scream that I was dying of longing, but I held back. The fear of being discovered was greater than the impulse, but deep down, I knew that every silent weekend only made my desire and love for him grow even stronger. One day, we were at home, just talking on the couch, with the TV on, but neither of us was really paying attention. Todd intertwined his fingers with mine, squeezed my hand tightly, and with a voice full of emotion, said, "Joel, you know I love you so much. I never imagined I could love a man this way. And it's been so hard dealing with the weekends." His words hit me like a shock, not because of the confession itself, but because of the intensity with which he opened his heart. I turned my face toward him and looked into those sincere eyes that seemed to be asking for help. I took a deep breath and, without thinking twice, replied, "Honey, you know I love you too, and I miss you as much as you miss me on weekends. I wish I could sleep with you, wake up with you by my side, live this without fear. But it's a complicated situation for both of us. I don't know what we're going to do. I just know that it's not easy for me either." We were silent for a few seconds, just looking at each other, as if every gesture were an unspoken promise. The weight of it was clear. It wasn't just desire. We had already crossed the line of the inevitable. So I took a deep breath and, trying to lighten the weight between us, I blurted out, "What if we took a trip?" Todd raised his eyebrow, surprised, but soon let out a slight smile, almost shy, like someone who already allows himself to dream. "Great idea, but how would we do that?" I squeezed his hand back, letting my thumb slide over the warm skin of his hand, and replied, "I don't know yet, but we can plan it. Think of something that won't cause problems for either of us. A place just for us, where no one will suspect anything, just for us to live a little of what we feel, without haste, without fear." His eyes sparkled in a different way, as if for the first time he was seeing a possible way out. We stood there, staring at each other, already imagining the freedom of being together, far away from everything. Todd settled himself on the couch, still holding my hand, and it seemed like his mind was already wandering before he even decided on a destination. He smiled slightly and said softly, "Imagine us on a deserted beach. Just the sound of the sea. No one watching. No need to hide anything. I could kiss you any time. Without fear." I laughed, a little embarrassed, but my heart raced just imagining it. It would be perfect. But beaches attract attention, right? Lots of people traveling. How about a cabin in the woods? I replied, already visualizing the two of us, a fireplace lit, the silence of the night broken only by his breathing next to me. He sighed deeply and ran his hand over my face. "Anywhere is fine, Joel. What matters is being with you, waking up and seeing your face in front of me, without having to get up in a hurry or make excuses. Just the two of us." We stood there in silence for a few seconds, each imagining the scene in our own way. I could feel the anxiety and desire growing, as if the simple act of dreaming together was already a way of living it. "Let's plan it carefully," I said. "Maybe we can arrange a weekend, say we're visiting family. We just have to be careful." Todd pulled me into a tight hug, rested his face on my chest, and whispered with a voice full of emotion, "I love you so much it hurts." That completely disarmed me. I was speechless for a few seconds, my heart beating wildly, not knowing what to say right away. Then I ran my hand through his hair and said softly, "I love you too, handsome, and we'll figure this out." During that week, in addition to the excuses we would give at home, we also worked out the practical details of our escape. We decided it wouldn't be safe to leave town together, so we would each drive to a more remote, discreet parking lot, where we would leave one of our cars. From there, we would continue our journey with only one car to avoid any suspicion along the way. Our destination was the mountains. We did a lot of research and found a place that seemed perfect, a peaceful retreat surrounded by greenery with a calm, crystal-clear lake. The photos showed a breathtaking landscape, with simple trails and a sunset that seemed to paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Just imagining being there, far away from everything and everyone, made us sigh. It would only be a weekend, but to us, it seemed like an eternity of freedom. That same week, it was time to put our plan into action. We talked to our wives and, to our surprise, everything worked out without any questions. I said I was going to visit my parents, as I had mentioned before, and she didn't suspect a thing. Todd talked about a work get-together in a neighboring town, something routine for him, and his wife just nodded, without raising any questions. When we spoke afterwards, we laughed with relief, like two boys who had just gotten away with something. It was strange how natural the lie had sounded, but at the same time, the weight of guilt, mixed with the anxiety of being about to experience something that was so much bigger than us. A weekend just for us, no clock, no ties, no constant fear of being discovered. Finally, the day of our trip arrived. I had spent the entire week counting down the hours, mentally planning every detail, and yet it still seemed like a distant dream. But when Friday evening began to fall and the sky was tinged with shades of gold and dark blue, my heart raced. It was real. I left home early, trying to hide my anxiety, and drove to the agreed parking spot. The cool night air brought a chill to my stomach that was difficult to control. I stayed there, inside the car, watching the sky gradually fade, feeling each minute weigh like an eternity, until the headlights of a car appeared in the distance, cutting through the darkness. I recognized them immediately. Todd, my chest filled with a mixture of nervousness and joy. He parked next to me, turned off the engine, and got out carrying his suitcase. He walked toward me with that smile that always melted me, as if to say without words that everything was worth it. I opened the passenger door, and as soon as he got in, he pulled me into a quick but intense kiss, as if he needed that contact to believe we were really there. "Finally," he whispered, letting out a heavy sigh, almost of relief. He put his bag in the back seat and leaned back, still smiling, his eyes shining like mine. I started the car, and we drove off. Outside, the dark sky began to reveal the first stars, and the road ahead seemed to open up to something bigger. A weekend that would be just ours, away from everything, away from everyone, as if the world had shrunk to fit inside that car. The road was already plunged into the darkness of the night, lit only by the car's headlights and the distant lights of a few streetlights that appeared along the way. The radio was playing softly, but I was barely paying attention to the music. A tightness began to grow in my chest, a strange mixture of anxiety and guilt that I couldn't hide. I remained silent, staring at the white line on the highway, as if it could distract me from my own thoughts. Todd noticed. He always did. Without saying anything at first, he just reached out and placed his hand firmly on my thigh. The warmth of his touch ran through me, bringing me an immediate sense of comfort. In a soft voice, he asked, "Are you okay, love? Why are you so quiet?" I tried to come up with an excuse, but my eyes betrayed me. I took a deep breath, and the confession came out almost in a whisper. "I don't know, love. I'm feeling a little guilty. Fear, maybe." He didn't take his hand away. On the contrary, he squeezed my leg lightly, as if to anchor me in the present, to prevent me from getting lost in my thoughts. "Stay calm, love. Everything will be fine," he said firmly, but with a sparkle of tenderness in his eyes. His words fell like a balm. I swallowed hard, turned my face away, and, unable to hold back, pressed my lips to his in a quick kiss, full of gratitude. "You're right," I murmured as I took hold of the steering wheel again. "It's our first trip, and I don't want to ruin it." Todd smiled slightly, leaving his hand there, as if silently saying he wouldn't let me stray from that path. no matter where it took us. I turned my eyes back to the road and, for the first time that night, felt that maybe everything was really going to be okay. It was already past 9 o'clock when we finally arrived at our destination. The road was behind us, and ahead of us lay a silent landscape, surrounded by tall trees swaying gently in the wind. The mountain air was cooler than I had imagined, and as soon as we got out of the car, I could smell the fresh scent of wet earth mixed with the fragrance of night flowers. At the reception, we were very well received. The girls smiled kindly, wished us a pleasant stay, and handed us the key to the cottage. There was something about the way she treated us that made me feel at ease, as if we were entering a refuge of our own, far from everything and everyone. Todd, beside me, carried the suitcase and gave me knowing looks, that slight smile of someone who was also eager for what was to come. As soon as we left the reception, we walked together along the path lit by small garden lanterns, hearing only the sound of our footsteps on the gravel and the distant croaking of a few frogs in the lake. We arrived at the cottage. The light wood contrasted with the darkness, and the porch, illuminated by a soft yellow light, seemed to be waiting for us. I put the key in the lock with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. It wasn't just a cottage opening, but a new chapter in our story. When the door opened, a welcoming smell of wood filled the air. The space was simple but cozy. A fireplace in the corner, light curtains on the windows, and a large bed in the center, covered with a soft comforter. I looked at Todd, and before I could say anything, he came up behind me, hugged me, and whispered in my ear, "Now our journey begins, my love." In that moment, all the anxiety that had accompanied me during the trip dissolved. There, in that isolated cottage, I knew that nothing could stop us from living every second together to the fullest. Soon after we left our bags in the bedroom, we ordered dinner at the cottage. It wasn't long before they brought a tray with hot dishes, simple but full of homemade flavor. The fireplace began to warm the room, and Todd opened a bottle of wine he had brought especially for the trip. We sat down at the table, toasted in silence, and I felt that mixture of relief and excitement spreading through my chest. The wine went down smoothly, and with each sip, the atmosphere seemed even more welcoming. "I'll let my wife know I'm here, love," I said, reaching for my cell phone. Todd smiled slightly, resting his glass on the table, and replied casually, "Okay, handsome. I already sent my wife a message too." I picked up my phone, took a deep breath, and dialed the number. The call was answered immediately. "Hi, I got home safely." My voice came out calm, almost automatic. On the other end, she wanted to know, "And how are your parents?" "They're fine." "Yes," I replied quickly, trying to sound convincing, and then I left my cell phone on the table, still connected, as I went back to holding my wine glass. It was a habit of mine. I forgot to hang up. Todd, distracted, continued fiddling with the cutlery. At that moment, a pang of conscience reminded me. My eyes darted to the phone, and with a quick movement, I grabbed it back, ending the call before anything could escape in the silence of that night. The weight of that small indiscretion hung in the air for a few seconds, but Todd's calm smile soon brought me back. He raised his glass, looking at me steadily, and said softly, "Now, here's to our first trip together. Have season of that prostance of this saying, the cames of the minigem." I smiled, raising my glass as well, and added, "May it be the first of many." Our glasses clinked softly, and in that moment I felt that something bigger was beginning to build between us. The wine, the fireplace, the isolated cottage, everything seemed to conspire to make that night unforgettable. The wine was almost finished. The glass in Todd's hand reflected the dim light from the lamp, but his eyes shone brighter than anything else in the room. The TV was still on, tuned to some unimportant program, merely a backdrop to what was really happening between us. He slowly placed his glass on the table, then took my hand tenderly and removed the glass from my fingers, placing it next to his. Then he turned to me, looking at me with that mixture of tenderness and intensity that only he knew how to express. "Love, do you have any idea how long I've waited for this?" His voice was low but full of truth. "You make me so happy. Sometimes I just stare at you, in silence, because I simply can't find the words to explain how much I love you." It hit me like an arrow. I couldn't respond right away. My chest tightened, my eyes welled up, and before I could even say anything, a tear rolled down my cheek. He, with all the calm in the world, ran the back of his fingers across my skin, gently drying it. "It's okay," he whispered, with that slight smile that melted me inside. I took a deep breath, still trembling, and said in a voice thick with emotion, "Love, I've never been good with words, but I feel exactly the same way about you. You came into my life out of nowhere, and, without me realizing it, you became everything. From that first day, I felt something different, something I couldn't explain. I thought I loved my wife. I thought I was happy. Until I met you. Until I started to love you, and discovered, for real, what love is." His breathing quickened. Todd moved closer, pressed his forehead against mine, and stayed there for a few seconds in silence, just feeling it with me. The whole room seemed to have disappeared, and all that was left was the weight of our truths, the lightness of our love, and the certainty that nothing would ever be the same after that night. He kissed me first, slowly, as if afraid that it was all just a dream. Then he pulled away, looked deep into my eyes, and kissed me again, even more tenderly. This back-and-forth kiss, left me completely surrendered, as if each of his gestures said, "You are mine, and I am yours." In a gentle impulse, he adjusted himself and came to sit on my lap, nestling against me, with a naturalness that seemed like destiny. Instinctively, my hands went to his waist, firm but delicate, feeling the warmth of his body so close. He then held my face with both hands, as if he didn't want me to look away for even a second from that passionate gaze. And we kissed like that, filled with desire, but also with love. A love that overflowed with every touch, every sigh, every exchange of lips. It was the best feeling in the world, a whirlwind of emotion, heat, goosebumps, and the certainty that we were experiencing something unique. He kissed me nonstop, and between kisses he let out low, hoarse moans that made my whole body shiver. I heard him whisper against my lips, "You're so beautiful." It set me on fire inside. I felt my heart race, my breathing quicken, and I realized he felt the same way. His body moved slightly over mine, as if seeking even more closeness, even more surrender. My hands squeezed his waist tighter, wanting to hold him, wanting more. The heat of our bodies mingled. Our kisses became more urgent, and every gesture seemed to take us to a point of no return. He began to take off his shirt, slowly, while still kissing me. I took advantage and took mine off too, unable to take my eyes off him. When I was left with that body pressed against mine, I felt a shiver just seeing his raw beauty. His broad chest, covered with thick, soft hair, brushed against mine, and the sensation drove me wild. With each kiss, our chests collided, the heat increased, and I didn't know if I was lost in his lips or in the texture of that body against mine. The desire only grew, and our movements, our whispers, everything reflected the intensity that took over the room. My hands ran down his back, squeezing, pulling him closer, wanting there to be no space between us. He smiled between kisses, moaned softly, and gave himself more and more. After a few minutes, he got up from my lap and walked to the bedroom. He came back right away, looking at me intensely, as if he were carrying a secret that only the two of us understood. He sat back down on my lap, and his embrace was so tight that it seemed like he wanted to melt me into his body. The kisses returned, long, deep, full of surrender. I felt every shiver, every rapid breath, and it was as if the whole room had disappeared, leaving only the two of us in that moment. He smiled mischievously between kisses, as if he knew exactly the effect he had on me, and pressed his lips back to mine, kissing me with even more desire, while our bodies adjusted in perfect harmony. Then, panting, he got up from my lap and lay down on the rug in front of the fireplace. He turned his face back and, with a look full of tenderness mixed with desire, said only, "Come here." The flame from the fireplace illuminated the outline of his body, and I approached slowly, feeling each step like a silent promise. I lay down next to him, our hands met, and he pulled me in for another deep kiss, full of everything that words could not explain. There, on the rug, warmed by the glow of the fireplace, our bodies sought each other in silence, and every gesture, every glance, every touch was a reminder that we were experiencing something forbidden but true. He kissed me slowly at first, as if afraid that it was all just a dream. Then, the kisses became more urgent, filled with love and desire. On impulse, he settled himself on my lap, and I held him by the waist, feeling our bodies fit together with a naturalness that seemed like destiny. The fireplace lit up the room. The heat from the fire mingled with the heat of our bodies, and soon there was no space between us. Our lips met non-stop. Our hands explored each other tenderly, and every glance said more than any words could. There, on the carpet, we gave ourselves to each other without haste, intensely, truly. We made love as if the world had ceased to exist, as if only that moment remained. When silence finally returned, we lay side by side, panting, just listening to the crackling of the fireplace. He looked at me tenderly and whispered that he loved me, and I smiled, feeling that that night had changed everything. Then we went to take a shower together. The hot water running down our bodies seemed to wash away not only our tiredness, but also any doubts. Between laughter, caresses, and long kisses, we confirmed what we already knew. We were completely devoted to each other. From time to time, I closed my eyes just to feel the pressure of the water, his skin pressed against mine, the heat of our bodies that even the shower couldn't extinguish. It was a long shower, full of muffled laughter, caresses, and touches that seemed like promises that the night wasn't over yet. After drying ourselves off, we went straight to bed. The fireplace still lit up the room, letting the shadows dance on our skin. We lay down together, embraced, and made love intensely and sweetly at the same time, as if nothing else existed but the two of us. We fell asleep like that, hands intertwined, pressed together, certain that there was nothing more certain in the world. On Saturday morning, I woke up before him and ordered breakfast at the cottage. When the tray arrived, I took it to the bedroom and woke him with a soft kiss. "Wake up, sleepyhead," he smiled lazily. "Hi, my love. If there's a better way to wake up, I don't know it." We had breakfast side by side in bed, laughing and cuddling, feeling that the day had gotten off to a perfect start. Later, we got dressed and decided to enjoy the morning by hiking a trail recommended by the lodge. At the front desk, the manager greeted us with a warm smile and asked, "How was your night? I hope you settled in well." "The research it is another pants." We replied that it had been great. He then commented amused, "This place is very popular with couples, and also for honeymoons. Are you on your honeymoon?" We looked at each other, smiling. Todd replied, "No, we're not married yet, but we plan to get married soon." The manager smiled even more. "When that time comes, you will be very welcome here." Before we left, he handed us a map of the trail and said in a conspiratorial tone, "At the end of the trail there's a beautiful lake. You can enjoy it in peace, if you know what I mean." We laughed at the comment, thanked him, and set off full of anticipation, ready to experience another special moment together. The trail began just behind the cottage, among tall trees that filtered the sunlight and created a play of shadows on the ground covered with dry leaves. The cool morning air carried the scent of damp earth, and birdsong completed the scene. We walked hand in hand, without haste, enjoying every detail of a setting that seemed tailor-made for us. From time to time, Todd squeezed my hand and smiled, as if he didn't need to say anything to show how happy he was. I also found myself admiring his face illuminated by the soft light, and my heart beat faster just knowing that we were experiencing this together. At a small natural lookout point, the trail opened up and revealed a valley surrounded by greenery. We stopped there, breathing deeply, until Todd pulled me by the waist and said with a passionate smile, "You know what I like best? Being here with you." The kiss that followed was slow, deep, like a silent promise. There, surrounded by nature, it was as if the world had stopped just for the two of us. Then Todd reached into his pocket and took out 2 identical leather bracelets. He put one on my wrist and said, his voice trembling with emotion, "I know we can't wear engagement rings right now, but I want this to symbolize our love." My eyes welled up. I put the other bracelet on his wrist and replied, "I promise to fight for us, Todd." He squeezed my hand and added, "I promise too, my love. I will never let this love die." We followed the trail hand in hand, still marked by our last kiss. The sun was already stronger, but the heat seemed insignificant compared to the lightness that surrounded us. A few minutes later, the sound of water began to mix with the singing of birds, and then, the vegetation opened up to reveal a crystal-clear lake, surrounded by tall trees, with sunlight dancing on the surface of the water. The scenery took my breath away. Todd stopped beside me, took a deep breath, and smiled. "I told you," he murmured, looking at me, and not just at the lake. "It's perfect, isn't it?" I nodded, enchanted, but more by the sparkle in his eyes than by the landscape. It felt like this place had been prepared just for the two of us, like a secret refuge, far from the world and any judgment. He then approached me, pulled me slowly toward him, and our lips met again, this time with the softness of someone who wants to prolong the moment, as if the lake and the silence of nature were witnesses to our love. Curious, he asked, "Honey, what do you think the manager meant by that about the lake?" I thought for a moment and replied, "I think he meant that we can swim freely here. Coded in Sveshen and the first of Lottie." Todd smiled mischievously. "Really? From what I understood, that's what he meant," I confirmed. He laughed, shook his head, and said with that provocative air, "Then let's find out." He started taking off his clothes right there, without hesitation, until he stood before me with the same naturalness of someone who is also undressing inside. I confess that, for a second, I thought someone might show up and witness what seemed to be ours alone, but I quickly dismissed the thought. I took a deep breath and followed him. Todd held my hand tightly and, laughing like a teenager, ran with me to the edge of the lake. We jumped together into the cool water, which was just perfect. We swam, dived, and laughed as he splashed water on my face, amused like a mischievous boy, making me laugh with him. Between laughter and splashes, Todd hugged me from behind, still in the water, pressing his body against mine. Even in contrast to the cold water, the warmth of his touch made me shiver. He whispered in my ear, his tone mixing affection and desire. "I love being like this with you, free. Just the two of us." I turned slowly and looked into his eyes. They sparkled in the sunlight reflecting off the lake, and that look was enough to make me forget the world outside. The playfulness gave way to a silence charged with intensity. Our lips met in a passionate, wet, long kiss, full of surrender. He pulled me closer, as if he wanted to trap me there in the water, and our bodies fit together naturally. The kiss grew deeper, our breath mingled, and his hands ran down my back in a firm, possessive, and affectionate caress. I held him tight too, feeling my heart race, as if every second were precious. For a moment, all that existed was the soft sound of the water around us, and the two of us, trapped in that bubble of love and restrained desire. He leaned close to my ear and whispered in a low, hoarse voice, "Love, I've been thinking about something." My whole body trembled just hearing that tone. I asked with a curious smile, "What were you thinking?" He looked me in the eyes, bit his lip, and said, "Let's make love. Thank you for watching." My heart raced. My first reaction was to hesitate, and I replied in an almost worried tone, "What if someone shows up?" Todd laughed softly, still hugging me in the water. "No one will show up. The manager himself said so," he said with that naughty smile that only he knew how to give. I couldn't resist. I sighed deeply and murmured, "Okay, let's go over there on the grass." We left together, hand in hand, walking to the shore. The water dripped off his body, golden from the sun. With every step I took, I felt how much I wanted him, and all I could think about was lying there on the grass, under the open sky, and giving myself completely to him. As soon as we got out of the water, he pulled me by the waist. I moved closer, my heart racing, and our lips met in an intense kiss, full of urgency. We fell together on the grass, hugging each other tightly, as if the world had disappeared around us. There, under the sun and with the lake in the background, we gave ourselves to each other. We made love intensely, truly, leaving risk and fear aside. It was as if every touch, every kiss, and every sigh reaffirmed what we already knew, that this love was stronger than anything else. When silence returned, we were panting, hugging each other on the grass, laughing softly like teenagers who had just shared a secret. He looked me in the eyes, caressed my face, and said tenderly, "Love, there's no place in the world where I feel more alive than here with you." I smiled, kissed his mouth softly, and replied, "I feel the same way, Todd. You're my safe place." We went back into the water together, laughing softly, and I asked, still not believing what we had just experienced, "Did you like that, love?" He ran his wet hand over my face, looking deep into my eyes, and replied with a passionate smile, I loved it. We got out of the water slowly, still laughing and exchanging knowing glances. The sun was already starting to warm our skin, and we hurried to get dressed, trying to hide the feeling of wobbly legs after what had just happened. I grabbed a protein bar that was there with us and handed it to him. "I'm already hungry, love," I said, opening mine too. He bit into the bar eagerly, breathing deeply, as if he was still trying to compose himself. We sat side by side, chewing in silence, but it was a good silence, full of satisfaction. Every now and then, he would look at me and give me a mischievous smile, as if to say without words, "I still can't believe we did that here." When we finished, he got up first, wiping his hands on his shorts and holding out his hand to me. "Let's go back?" he asked in that calm tone, but with a mischievous gleam still in his eyes. I got up, held his hand tightly, and we started walking back, side by side, our bodies tired, but our heads full of that memory that would stay with us forever. The walk back was peaceful, though a little tiring. The sun was beating down harder, and our bodies were begging for rest. When we finally got back to the cottage, we went straight to the shower, letting the water run over our skin as if washing away not only our fatigue, but also the secret we carried with us from there. Then we got dressed and headed to the restaurant near the reception. We chose a table near the window, and soon we were having lunch, regaining our energy. While we were enjoying our food, the hotel manager approached us with a friendly smile. "So, how was your trip?" he asked. Todd was the first to answer, without hesitation. "Everything was great. The place is really beautiful." The manager tilted his head curiously. "Did you enjoy the lake?" Todd glanced quickly at me, with that mischievous look hidden in the corner of his eyes, and replied, "It was better than we expected, wasn't it, honey?" I smiled, controlling the memory that throbbed in my mind, and confirmed, "Yes, it was." The manager smiled contentedly. "That's great, I'm happy for you. Enjoy your lunch." And then he walked away, leaving us alone again with our glasses, plates, and knowing glances. We had a leisurely lunch, laughing at simple things and exchanging glances that only we understood. Then we headed back to the cottage, already feeling that pleasant tiredness in our bodies. As soon as we entered, we took off our shoes and threw ourselves onto the soft bed. The idea was just to rest a little, but the silence, comfort, and warmth of the room made our eyes heavy. Without realizing it, I ended up nestling into Todd, feeling his arm over me and the peaceful rhythm of his breathing. Time passed slowly, lulled by the peace of that moment. And so, side by side, we ended up dozing off, drifting into a light and peaceful sleep. We woke up as the sun was beginning to set. Still sleepy, we went outside the cottage and sat on the grass, facing the wonderful view of the sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, reflecting a calm that seemed to embrace everything around us. Todd went into the cottage and soon returned with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. He poured carefully, and together we toasted without words, just with a look that said it all. We stayed there, side by side, drinking slowly, contemplating that sunset that transformed the moment into something almost magical. At one point, I looked at him and saw him smiling, with a light and happy expression. It moved me deeply. The image of him there, by my side, made me imagine what it would be like to live the rest of my life with him. A house of our own, a dog running around the yard, simple afternoons like that repeating themselves forever. I smiled to myself at this vision. "What is it, love?" he asked, still smiling. "I was imagining myself living the rest of my life with you." Todd looked at me with a twinkle in his eye and said, his voice firm and tender, "I think about that every day. One day we'll remember this moment and say, 'Honey, we did it.'" I felt a chill at those words. He put his hand on my thigh, squeezing it lightly, and added, "I love you." "I love you too, my love," I replied, moved. The sun then said goodbye behind the mountains, leaving the dark blue sky to take over. We remained silent, just enjoying the certainty that united us. When night finally fell, we returned to the cabin together, feeling that this had been one of the most beautiful moments of our lives. We lit the fireplace, and soon the gentle warmth began to fill the cabin, mixed with the pleasant crackling of the burning wood. We turned on the TV, but the truth is that we hardly paid any attention to what was on. The real show was there, inside the two of us. We lay down together on the sofa, me behind Todd, who was comfortably settled in front of me, fitting perfectly into my embrace. My hands rested on his chest, feeling the calm rhythm of his breathing. Sometimes I tilted my face and left a soft kiss on the back of his neck, smelling his skin, feeling the warmth he emanated. Todd sighed softly, as if my every gesture was a silent confirmation that we were in the right place, living what we had always wanted. That moment was simple, but perfect. Nothing was missing. The warmth of the fireplace, each other's company, and the comfortable silence of those who don't need words to feel complete. I stood there, hugging him, thinking that there was nothing in the world I wanted more than this. Suddenly, the ring of a cell phone broke the silence. The sound seemed to explode in the room. I turned my face back quickly, whispering breathlessly, "Wait a minute, love. Let me see who it is." I picked up the phone and my heart raced when I saw the name on the screen. I whispered, almost laughing nervously, "It's my wife, honey. I'll get it." I slid my finger across the screen and spoke, trying to sound normal. "Hi, honey. Good evening. How are you?" She replied calmly, "Hi, honey." He settled given brash. "Everything's fine. And you?" I took a deep breath and replied, trying to stay calm. "Everything's fine. I'm here in the living room, watching TV." "And how is everyone there?" she asked. "They're fine," I murmured. My cell phone gave a low battery warning. I seized the opportunity. "Honey, my cell phone is about to die. We'll talk more later, okay?" "Okay, enjoy your parents. Kisses, see you tomorrow." "Kisses, see you tomorrow," I said, hanging up quickly. I put my phone on the table, face down, as I always did. I took a deep breath, turned my face away, and whispered to Todd, "Okay, honey, I want you all to myself." And we made love like it was the first time. Then we stayed there for a while, glued together, enjoying every second of that good feeling. My body was still trembling inside, but the peace of being with him filled me completely. We just stayed like that, enjoying each other, exchanging slow kisses, soft caresses, and knowing smiles. After a few minutes, he hugged me tight and whispered in my ear, "Let's take a shower, love." I nodded with a smile. When I got up, I picked up my cell phone from the table and realized he had turned it off. I went to the bedroom, put it on charge, and went back to him. Hand in hand, we headed to the bathroom. The hot water ran down our bodies, washing away our tiredness and any remaining worries. Between kisses, he ran his hands over my entire body, as if he wanted to memorize every detail, and I did the same to him. There was no rush, just care and a desire to be together. We left the shower feeling refreshed, wrapped in towels, laughing like two teenagers who had just experienced something forbidden and delicious. We went to the living room, still barefoot, and Todd spoke in that relaxed tone I loved. "I think we deserve a nice dinner after that, don't you?" "Sure. After expending so much energy, only a really good meal will do." We placed our order and threw ourselves on the couch, hugging each other, waiting for it to arrive. The silence was filled only by the sound of his breathing on my neck and the caress of his hand sliding lightly across my chest. It was as if the whole world had stopped, and all that mattered was there, between us. The order arrived, and when we opened the packages, the smell of food filled the room. We laughed like two hungry kids, still with towels wrapped around our waists, improvising a table on the couch. Between bites, he looked at me with that mischievous smile, and I couldn't resist poking him with my foot just to tease him. "If you keep that up, I'm going to have to take you back to the bedroom before dessert," he said in a low voice, making me laugh. We ate slowly, enjoying not only the food, but the simple fact that we were together, light-hearted, unhurried. When we finished, we pushed the boxes aside and stayed there on the couch, embracing each other, exchanging lazy kisses and silent caresses. Little by little, sleep came. The fullness of dinner, the feeling of peace, and the delicious tiredness after everything we had experienced that night weighed heavily on our eyelids. He yawned, hugging me even tighter, and murmured, "Come on, love. Let's go to bed." I got up with him, and we walked side by side to the bedroom. We lay down together, naked, skin to skin, feeling each other's warmth under the blanket. Before closing his eyes, he kissed me on the forehead and whispered, "Good night, my perfect one." I smiled in the dark, caressed his chest, and replied, "Good night, my handsome one." And so, lulled by touch and silence, we fell asleep together. The The soft light of morning was already coming through the cracks in the curtains when he woke up first. I felt a light kiss on my cheek, then another on my lips, until I heard his low, amused voice. "Who's the sleeping beauty today?" he asked, with a smile I could almost hear in his voice. I opened my eyes slowly, still half asleep, and mumbled with a laugh, "Honey, let me sleep a little longer." But he wouldn't take no for an answer. He climbed on top of me in bed, leaning carefully, and started tickling my waist, making me laugh between protests. "Oh no, don't," I said with that mischievous look. "Let's get up, you handsome hunk." I squirmed with laughter, trying to hold his hands, but the more I asked, the more he insisted, until, unable to resist, I pulled him close and hugged him tightly, turning the game into a long, slow kiss. The laughter gave way to a knowing silence, and we lay there, wrapped in the sheets, enjoying the simple pleasure of starting the day together. We had breakfast at the restaurant, trying to prolong every minute together as much as possible. When we returned to the cottage, we began to pack our bags in silence, that heavy silence that only comes when you know that reality is about to knock on the door. As I folded a shirt, I noticed that Todd had stopped. He was standing still, just looking at me with that look full of feelings. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked, curious and concerned at the same time. He took a deep breath and replied in a low voice, "I don't know, honey. I just suddenly felt a little sad. I don't want to be away from you." I let go of the shirt and went over to him. I wrapped my arms around him, rested my face against his, and said firmly, "Don't be sad. We'll figure this out, okay? Do you trust me?" He looked me in the eyes with a sincerity that melted me, and replied, "Yes, I trust you." "Yes." I hugged him even tighter and smiled slightly. "Then put a smile on your face. Everything will be fine, and you know, I don't like to see you sad." But he let out a shy, almost embarrassed smile and murmured, "Okay, love. I'm sorry." I kissed his mouth slowly and whispered against his lips, "You don't have to apologize, love. You're the best part of me." After packing our bags and settling everything at the front desk, we left the cottage behind. The sky was clear, with a few clouds golden from the morning sun, and the mountain air brought a freshness that seemed to want to accompany us down the road. We got in the car, threw our bags in the back seat, and continued our journey. I drove slowly, enjoying every curve in the road, while Todd, next to me, seemed happier than ever. He rolled down the window, let the wind mess up his hair, and smiled like a kid. Sometimes, he hummed along to a song playing on the radio, changing the lyrics to nonsense just to make me laugh. Other times, he made up corny jokes that were only funny because of the way he told them, gesturing with his hands and laughing before he even finished. Suddenly, I felt his hand rest on my thigh. He squeezed it lightly, as if to remind me he was there, and smiled without saying a word. Soon after, he intertwined his fingers with mine, leaving our hands together on the gear shift. It was simple, but it washed over me like a warm wave. Being there, holding hands on the road, made me feel like we were much more than two lovers in hiding. We were a couple. Every now and then, he would lean a little closer to me, brushing his lips against my shoulder, or tickle my waist, forcing me to scold him between laughs. "Stop, Todd, I'm driving," I would say, laughing, trying to keep my focus on the road. "I can't resist, sweetheart. You're even more beautiful when you complain," he would reply, with that naughty look that melted me. The road seemed shorter with him there. The wind blew in through the window, the smell of nature still permeated our clothes, and I looked at Todd, so light, so devoted, and thought to myself, is this real? Will life really allow us to live like this, side by side, without fear? We were happy, intensely happy, laughing, joking, exchanging affection as if there were nothing else but that road. And it was precisely in this contrast of fulfillment that my heart tightened. I couldn't explain why, but something inside me already sensed it. Our world, so perfect at that moment, was about to fall apart. After a few hours on the road, we finally arrived at the parking lot where Todd had left his car. I parked mine, and before he even opened the door, he leaned over and gave me a quick kiss, full of that tenderness that only he had. He got out, ready to grab the suitcase. But before he could even open the trunk, the parking lot attendant came up to him, calling out, "Mr. Todd, is everything okay? I tried to call you, but I couldn't get through. You left your interior light on. Todd's eyes widened and he ran to the car. He turned the key several times, but nothing happened. The engine was dead. Damn, he muttered, running his hand through his hair. Now what? The owner added, in a resigned tone. I'm sorry, sir, but it's Sunday. There's nothing we can do today. Tomorrow. Todd took a deep breath, approached me and said, almost in despair, now what, honey? What am I going to do? I held his hand tightly and replied quickly, come with me. When we get there, we'll try to blend in. We can't arouse suspicion. He nodded, grabbed his suitcase, and got into the car. We drove on together in heavy silence, each lost in our own thoughts. A few minutes later, I parked in front of the house. As soon as I turned off the car, I saw the front door open. My wife was standing there, arms crossed, waiting for me. Just by the look on her face, I knew right away. Something was wrong. She didn't take her eyes off Todd as he got out of the car with his suitcase in his hand. There was a cold, contained anger, unlike anything I had ever seen before. I got out of the car in a hurry, before even grabbing my things, and went over to her, trying to speak. Honey, you won't believe what happened. She interrupted me firmly, her eyes watery but full of rage. I know what happened, Joel. My heart froze. What? What do you mean? She took a deep breath, and her voice came out sharp. Last night, when you answered my call, you forgot to turn off your cell phone. I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. No. She interrupted me again, even more serious, leaving no room for defense. I heard you, Joel. I heard everything. I know you weren't at your parents' house. I know you were with the neighbor. My whole body froze. I felt my face burn, my chest tighten. Honey, please, let me explain. No! She cut me off, raising her hand. Don't waste your time with this. There's nothing to explain. Tears were already streaming down her face, but her voice remained firm. And, for your misfortune or good fortune, I don't know. The neighbor knows too. I told her everything myself. My world collapsed completely. It was as if each word she uttered was a blow, shattering any hope I still had of hiding that secret life. She took a deep breath, wiped her face angrily, and added, in fact, I've already done you a favor. Your bags are packed. Take them and get out of my life. I stood there, paralyzed, not knowing what to do. The silence of the street seemed to mock me, her words still echoing in my head like a sentence. At that moment, I was certain. Everything I had built, my entire life, had come crashing down in a single moment. I went into the house without saying another word to my wife. I grabbed my bags, the laptop that was on the table, and left. Each step felt like it weighed a ton. As I was putting my things in the car, I heard a loud noise. I looked to the side and saw Todd also leaving the house, 2 suitcases in his hands. The door behind him slammed shut, the hollow sound of a life that had also just fallen apart. He didn't say anything. He just walked over to me with red eyes, put his suitcases in the trunk next to mine, and got in the car in silence. I drove aimlessly, not knowing where to go. The road seemed endless, and my mind was blank. All I had was the heavy silence beside me and the pain etched on his face. At one point, I pulled over to the side of the road, unable to continue without looking at him. I turned my head and saw him. Todd was motionless, his gaze lost, sadness engulfing every feature of his face. I held his hand, my voice breaking, and said, I'm sorry for this, love, for everything. He couldn't take it. The tears started to fall, and soon he was crying uncontrollably. My chest tightened. I pulled him toward me, rested his head against my chest, and stayed there, feeling every sob, every heavy breath. There were no words that could help, only silence and my hand stroking his hair, trying to say what my mouth couldn't. After a few minutes, when he finally began to calm down, I lifted his face gently, kissed his forehead, and started driving again. This time, without rushing, without a destination, until we found a simple hotel, far away from there. I parked, turned off the car, and we sat in absolute silence for a few seconds before getting out of the car. It was the beginning of a new reality, hard, uncertain, but ours. We entered the hotel in silence. We got the key at the front desk and went up to the room. As soon as we opened the door, Todd went straight to the bathroom. I heard the water running, and soon he came back, his face still wet, his eyes red. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, and he sat down next to me, not looking at me. His hands were shaking as he stared at the floor. I held one of them firmly and whispered, "Honey, look at me." He slowly raised his eyes, and at that moment he looked more fragile than I had ever seen him. "Forgive me. I'm so sorry," I said, swallowing hard. He shook his head and replied in a broken voice, "No, love. You don't need to apologize. It happened, and it's okay. I just didn't think it would be this hard. I'm scared. I don't know what of, but I am. And I'm ashamed too." My chest tightened. I leaned in and kissed his lips tenderly. "Come on, love. Let's take a shower together. Then we'll get something to eat. I'm hungry. Don't be like that. I love you." He smiled slightly, still sad, and murmured, "I love you too." I caressed his face and added, "Todd, this weekend you made me the happiest man in the world, and I promised you that we would fight for our love. And you can be sure, we will win, even after this setback. I know that difficult times will still happen, but you know what matters?" He looked at me with teary eyes. "What?" "What matters is that we'll be together, and that's more important than any problem that might come up, okay? Never forget that." He took a deep breath, a tear still streaming down his cheek, and said softly, "Okay, love, I'm sorry for being weak." I squeezed his hand tighter and replied firmly, "You're not being weak. We have not being weak. You're being human, and that just shows what a beautiful heart you have. That's exactly what I admire about you." He closed his eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and leaned against my chest, as if he had found the refuge he needed there. We got up in silence and went to the shower together. This time there was no rush, no uncontrolled lust, just the need to be close, to feel each other's bodies as a shelter. The hot water ran over us as I slowly ran my hand over his shoulders, and he responded with small touches, as if to say without words, "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." We didn't talk much, but we didn't need to. The affection was in every simple gesture, in the soap I rubbed on his chest, in the foam he washed out of my hair, in the light kiss we exchanged under the water. It was the most human shower I've ever had, not out of desire, but out of complicity. Afterwards, we dried ourselves off, got dressed, and went down to the hotel restaurant. We chose a table further away, almost in a corner. We ordered just a quick snack, something simple, and while I ate heartily, Todd barely touched his food. He remained downcast, distracted, nibbling at his bread without paying attention to the taste. I tried to get a smile out of him, telling little jokes, remembering funny moments from the trip, anything that might lighten the mood. Sometimes he managed to smile, but soon his expression became serious again, and I understood. We returned to the room late at night. We had no plans, just the need to be together. We threw ourselves on the bed, turned on the TV to some random channel, without really paying attention. We lay there, hugging each other, quiet, trying to process everything that had happened, the sudden collapse of the life we had, the pain of a forced separation, but also the strange certainty that, despite everything, we were on the right path, together. There, lying in front of the illuminated TV screen, the silence between us was not empty. It was the space where, little by little, our hearts tried to calm down. The days went by, and life found a new rhythm. We rented an apartment together, simple but full of meaning. Every piece of furniture we put in, every picture we hung, seemed to be a way of saying, "This is our new beginning." Little by little, Todd started to be himself again. The jokes that always made me laugh out loud returned, along with the spontaneous smiles and the lightness in his eyes. Seeing this filled me with relief, as if the weight we had been carrying had begun to dissipate. My divorce came through a few months later, and soon his did too. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Between comings and goings, he continued to see his son whenever he could, and I also took every chance I could to be with my daughter. The fear of losing my bond with her was great, but over time, after many conversations, she accepted me. It hurt at first, but little by little I realized that true love, the love between a father and daughter, was stronger than any judgment. When things finally started to settle down, one night, we were lying on the couch, a comfortable silence filling the room. Todd looked at me with that mischievous smile and said, "Honey, I have an idea." I smiled back, already imagining one of his crazy ideas. "What is it, honey?" He took a deep breath, his eyes sparkling, and said with the utmost naturalness in the world, "Let's buy a house." My heart raced. I gave him a big smile and replied without hesitation, "Let's do it, honey." "Thanks for watching." He settled back on the couch, with that mischievous look on his face, and added, "Great. I already picked one out." I widened my eyes, laughing. "What do you mean you picked it without me?" He laughed along with me, pulling me in for a quick kiss, and replied, "Honey, you know I have good taste, right?" I smiled even wider and replied, "Of course I do. If you didn't, you wouldn't be with me." He tickled me, making me laugh out loud, and said, "Very funny." Then he got up excitedly, grabbed his laptop from the table, and opened it in front of me. When the screen lit up, there it was. A beautiful house, a little way out of town, surrounded by greenery, with a majestic lake in the background. I was silent for a few seconds, enchanted by the image. The place looked like something out of a dream, peaceful, welcoming, perfect for the two of us. My eyes filled with tears, and I just said, "Honey, it's perfect." He smiled contentedly, like a child proud of his own plan, and there, without further discussion, we decided it would be ours. That house wasn't just a property. It was a symbol. Our future. In the days that followed, anxiety took hold of us. Between phone calls, signatures, and visits, everything seemed to happen in the blink of an eye. When we went to see the house in person, it was even more impressive than in the photos. We walked hand in hand through the rooms, imagining where each piece of furniture would go, every detail of our future. Outside, the lake reflected the blue sky like a mirror, and the soft sound of the wind through the trees surrounded us. Todd pulled me by the waist, hugged me, and whispered in my ear, "Honey, I can see us growing old here. This was not more costs, in by one tooth. There's not a polite life. There's not market." I smiled, touched his face with my hands, and replied, "Me too, handsome. This place is perfect for us." A few days later, it was official. The house was ours. And when the time came to move, it felt like we were starting a new life. We carried our bags in a few boxes, laughing the whole time like two kids discovering freedom. We walked through the front door with the key that was now ours alone. Todd, excited, raised his arms and shouted, "Welcome to our home, love." I couldn't help myself, and kissed him right there, in the middle of the still empty living room. My heart felt light, full of hope. For the first time in a long time, there was no fear, only the certainty that we had finally found our place in the world. The morning after the move, the sun streamed through the makeshift curtains, illuminating the room full of stacked boxes. I woke up before Todd and just watched him sleep, sprawled out on the mattress temporarily placed on the living room floor. There was something magical about seeing this man, who had turned my life upside down, now lying there, sleeping peacefully in what would be our home. Shortly after, he slowly opened his eyes, sleepy, and smiled when he saw me. "Good morning, love," he said in that hoarse voice of someone who had just woken up. "Good morning, handsome," I replied, stroking his messy hair. "Ready to start our life?" He laughed and got up, still a little groggy. We made a simple breakfast in the makeshift kitchen bread, black coffee, cheese, and ate sitting on the porch, looking out at the lake. The silence of nature was different, almost sacred, as if to say that this place belonged to us. Then we spent the morning unpacking boxes, laughing at the funny things we found. An old photo of me that he teased me about, an old t-shirt of his that I insisted on throwing away, and he refused. Time flew by, and even in the middle of the mess, everything seemed perfect. In the afternoon, we decided to walk to the lake. The water reflected the sky, calm and clear. Todd held my hand and, with a serene smile, said, "This will be our refuge, Joel. Whenever the world outside seems too much, we'll come here and remember what really matters." I nodded, feeling my heart warm. We sat on the edge, throwing pebbles into the water like two teenagers. The wind messed up our hair, but inside me everything finally felt right. When we returned in the late afternoon, we lit the fireplace for the first time. The room was still almost empty, but the two of us together were enough to bring the space to life. We lay down on the mattress, hugging each other, watching the flames dance, and Todd whispered, "Now, my love, we have a home." And I knew for sure. It was just the beginning of our new life. The tables went by, and little by little, our life began to take on a new rhythm. The house no longer felt empty like it did at first. Every corner was filled with our things, our laughter, and, above all, our moments together. Whenever he could, Todd's son came to spend the weekend with us. He loved running around the yard, playing ball with his father, and at the end of the day, sitting by the lake, throwing pebbles into the water. I watched from afar, my heart warm, seeing how affectionate Todd was with him. Sometimes my daughter would come too. She loved the tranquility of the place, saying she felt at peace there. She made a point of helping set the table for dinner and always offered to prepare a simple dessert, as if she wanted to leave her mark on that house. The most beautiful thing was seeing how much they loved being there, as if the house had already become a part of each of them too. There was no awkwardness, no distance. It was as if the space was naturally made to welcome our families, even if in different ways. Deep down, I knew that this was confirmation that we had made the right decision. It wasn't just about me and Todd, it was about creating a home that could also be welcomed by those we loved. And every time I saw my daughter laughing or his son running across the lawn, Todd and I would exchange a silent look that said it all. We were building something real. One late afternoon, we were sitting by the lake. The sun was slowly setting, painting the water in shades of gold and orange, while a light breeze rippled the surface. Todd looked at me silently for a few seconds, with that serene smile that only he had, and then said, "Honey, you know what I just remembered?" I turned my face curiously and replied, "What, honey?" He took a deep breath, his eyes shining with a mixture of emotion and peace. I remembered that day when we were sitting outside the cottage watching the sunset. Do you remember? We said that one day we would look back and say, "We did it, honey." My heart warmed instantly. A smile appeared on my lips and I squeezed his hand. "That's true, honey. I remember. And you know what? We really did it." We stood there, hand in hand, watching the reflection of the sun on the lake, letting the silence say everything that words no longer needed to say. As the days went by, the bracelet Todd gave me at the beginning of our story was no longer the only symbol of our love. It was still on our wrists, loaded with meaning, but we decided to take another step. We started wearing rings too. It wasn't an official marriage. There was no ceremony, but there was something much bigger behind it, the certainty that this was a soul commitment. We're not married yet, and sometimes we even talk about it. We've talked about making it official, getting everyone together and sealing our love before the world. But we always come to the same conclusion. For us, it's not the document or the party that really matters. What completes us is this feeling that was born unexpectedly and grew every day until it became the center of our lives. I look at the ring on my finger and I know it's more than just a piece of jewelry. It's a silent reminder of everything we've been through, of all the battles we've fought and won together. It's proof that true love doesn't need rules to exist. And when Todd holds my hand, looks into my eyes, and smiles, I know for sure what we feel for each other is more than enough. That's what keeps us whole. That's what makes us complete. Now I'm ending this story. I hope it inspires you to fight for love, just like Todd and I did. Because in the end, every battle is worth it. Every struggle, every defeat, every tear. Life doesn't always let us win every time, but what really matters is never giving up on love. Don't forget the version of the story that's over 2 hours long. It's in the comments. Kisses, and take care.